Amazing. So let's start off with the basics, right?
Mhm.
Because there are some folks, they look at their horoscopes, they have a very rudimentary idea of what astrology is. So for those that don't know, or for those that want to know more, tell us, what is astrology?
Sure. Astrology is the practice of looking at planet transits above. So, specifically, where all of the planets are in the sky to interpret how our lives are being impacted right here on planet Earth. Most people know zodiac signs and so will read their horoscope, and that's fine. What a lot of folks don't know is that when we're born, all of the planets are in different zodiac signs, and each planet means something specific to your personality. So, what I do as an astrologer is I will create astrological birth charts, which are pictures that shows where the planets were when someone was born, and then I'll give a reading based off of that information.
What do you say to people who are just like, astrology is just a bunch of woo woo, like it doesn't really, make any sense, et cetera, that feel like it's just, gobbledygook? Because I'm truly not one of those people at all. But I remember recently when I had made mention of something that this horrible regime was doing. And I said, and right now, Mars is here and, Mercury's in retrograde and blah, blah. And
Mhm.
folks are just like, I can't take you seriously now because, like, you're bringing astrology into this. So, what do you say in response to that?
Well, the first thing I say is get a reading. Because you'll be surprised how much you can learn about yourself, about your life, about your past, about your future by simply looking at your natal chart, your astrology chart. I think a lot of people have that immediate reaction when we say the word astrology for two reasons. From my experience, a lot of folks, feel conflicted, especially if they were raised in a religious household. There's conflict, there's tension with looking to another, source of input when it comes to our lives here on planet Earth. The second experience I have as to why folks react that way is they just don't know. They don't know
Mhm.
enough about what astrology actually is. So, for any skeptics out there, I would say get a reading first, learn about your natal chart, and go from there when it comes to just increasing your understanding.
And my response to folks that, that say that the skepticism is that religion is made up. Like whatever religion you
True.
subscribe to was made up
Right,
by a group of people. It is a series of stories. They're important stories, right, that
right.
help you make sense of the world around you and help guide you and center you around particular morals or values. But to say that one thing that is thousands of years old,
Mhm.
right, guided by the stars and the planets that shift around us, that cause, oceans to pull and waves to move in different ways and cycles and all of these things. And when I think about why we moved as a culture away from astrology and into organized religion, the truth
Mhm.
has always comes back to one thing: money and
Money.
power.
Yeah.
Money and power and access.
Absolutely, and control. I mean,
Yeah.
the church itself in forever times has been such a powerful tool to control the minds and the thinking and the attitudes of, the collective. So I agree, religion is 100% made up. And for those who still aren't convinced, you can reference the Bible. I mean, for crying out loud, scripture allegedly claims that the three wise men followed the stars and the planets to find the baby Christ. The creator God made these planets that I look to give astrological readings and interpretations. So there's always a nice clapback, if you will, to the naysayers as it relates to those, skeptical about astrology. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Okay. So, what has been really interesting to me is at the end of last year,
Hmm.
I noticed a lot of folks in your astrological community were talking about 2025
Hmm.
and talking about 2025 in the context of politics and how the shifts that were occurring have occurred at different points in our history.
Mhm.
And what scared the hell out of me, Tracy, is that the parallels that were being made, none of them were good. They were looking at the stars and at the planets at times of great revolution and
Mhm.
upheaval. So, can you pull us back to a 50,000-foot view and
Yes.
tell us about where the systems were aligned and what parallels people in your community have been talking about with regard to history and our current moment and where the planets were?
Yeah. So if you think about just the natural order of planets orbiting around the sun, which is the science of astronomy, last year, specifically towards the end of last year, the planet Pluto began moving through the constellation Aquarius, the sign Aquarius. And the last time Pluto occupied that same portion of the sky was 250 years ago during the American Revolution. Okay. Secondly, the planet Neptune is currently occupying the area of the sky where it hasn't been since the Civil War. The planet Uranus is currently occupying the area of the sky where it hasn't been since World War II. Before then, also the Civil War. And so we're seeing these outer planets, these planets that are farthest from the sun, return to places where they haven't been in decades, centuries. And the points where they are in the sky are similar to points that we've seen in the past when there was, these uprisings and inflection points during the American Revolution, during the Civil War, during the World War II. And what makes this so major, for lack of a better word, is that all of this is happening at the same time.
Right.
So Pluto just entered Aquarius in November of 24. Neptune currently moving through the sign of Aries, that just happened in March of this year.
Hmm.
And Uranus just entered the sign of Gemini in July of this year. So not only are we seeing these planets occupy parts of the sky that we haven't seen since these major historical events, but it's all taking place at the same time. And so astrologers are looking at this and we're able to see, oh, this is what's coming down the pike for us as a collective. This is what we can expect to anticipate as these planets make these transits. Are we going to have an American Revolution similar to what we saw in
Hmm.
1775? No. But there is a revolution taking place right now. Are we going to see a similar world war that we saw in the 1930s and 40s? No. But we are seeing these propaganda campaigns that are supporting authoritarian risings and fascism. So, this is what astrologers are really tracking and paying attention to as we move through this current moment in history.
So I think that, to me, again, when I saw those, when I saw those dates,
Yeah.
when I saw the Civil War, when I saw the American Revolution and World War II, I said, "Oh dear God." Right? Like as the calendar year was turning, knowing obviously in November of 2024 that Donald Trump had won the election, and I
Mhm.
use air quotes, and people know that. Um, had won the election. And based on what the astrology community was saying, I'm like, we're in for a hell of a ride.
Yes.
And, there are different planets that at different times, and I want you to be able to speak to this, make a return or leave for a period of time. Jupiter, the planet of expansion, right? Is now making a return or ending a transit that was 12 or 15 years. Can you explain that to us? Like these transits and these periods that some would say, look at different points in your own life. What things are you
Mhm.
closing out? What things, were happening at the beginning of this transit or at the end? Can you speak to that?
Sure, yeah. So as the planets are orbiting the sun, they take a specific amount of time to do so. And so Pluto, for example, takes 250 years just to make one orbit around the sun. So America right now is experiencing its Pluto return. And that is an event that happens when any planet returns to where it was at one's moment of birth or one's inception, right? And so when the founding fathers were writing the Declaration of Independence, the planet Pluto was in the same position in the sky then as it is right now. So that's significant. Um, Speaking specifically to Jupiter, Jupiter takes about 12 years just to make one orbit around the sun. So, still a long time, but moves much faster than Pluto. And Jupiter has returned to the sign of Cancer, where it hasn't been since 2013. And so you can look back to 2013 and
Mhm.
see, well, what was happening for us as a collective at that time? What was happening in your personal life at that time to gain
Mhm.
some insight as to what will be happening right now? And it's important to note that not only are these planets affecting us collectively, but they're also affecting us personally.
Mhm.
Just as we're seeing a revolution right now play out in the broader macro world, somewhere in our chart, Pluto is bringing a revolution in our own personal lives.
Mm.
And this makes me think of the saying, as above, so below. We're
Yep.
all impacted by this. We're all affected by this. And that's why it's so important to pay attention to where these planets are going and heading to kind of identify a blueprint for how we get through this period of time.
Incredible. And one of the things too that I also look to and I think is really interesting and a lot of other people may want to know more information about is eclipse season, right?
Mhm.
The eclipses. And are we in the second or third eclipse of this closeout of this year? I'm not sure. You
So
tell me.
we've just come out of the second eclipse season. We usually get two pairs of eclipses every year. They come usually during the winter or spring months, and then again, summer or fall months. And always in pairs is a solar eclipse and a lunar eclipse that serve as bookends to new chapters. The ancients believed that eclipses were these harbingers of change. And so, whenever we have an eclipse, they really do represent these new significant chapters of change and transformation. And the eclipses that we just had, the season that we've just wrapped up, those eclipses were significant, specifically the solar eclipse that happened in the sign of Virgo. Solar eclipses, if you think of, the different lunar phases, the new moon, the waxing moon, the full moon, solar eclipses I always describe as like these amplified new moons that bring new chapters.
Mm.
And the solar eclipse that we just had in Virgo happened at the very last degree of the sign, the infamous 29th degree, the anaretic degree is what it's referred to in astrology. And the reason why that is so important is because the 29th degree is connected to karma and fate and destiny. And so it's interesting that we had this solar eclipse that's meant to bring a big new chapter at the end of a sign which represents completions.
Mm.
And what's more is that the following new moons and solar eclipses taking place in 2026, they all happen at that last degree. So we've got, for example, a new moon in Scorpio this month on November 19th at 29 degrees Scorpio. Next year, we have a solar eclipse in Aquarius on February 17th at 28 degrees Aquarius. So the new moons that follow are happening at the end of these signs, which really further emphasize this precipice of transformation and new cycles and new chapters and new beginnings for all of us.
I find that so
Yeah,
fascinating. It's
same.
it's one of the reasons why I try and get my chart read once a year or,
Mhm.
as a way to inform because what I say to people, right, who again, speaking to the skeptics that are out there is that I look at my chart readings, right, whether
Mhm.
they're 6 months or a year out as a weather report,
Yeah,
right? If I'm getting the weather report and it says that there's a possibility of rain, then I know how to dress, right?
exactly.
If and so I think about that in the same way. If I'm getting an astrological report that says, you know what, this week you may have difficulty with communication. right?
Mhm.
There may be mishaps, there may be mix ups. Do you know
Right.
what I'm going to do then? I'm going to be a bit more intentional
Exactly.
about the conversations that I'm having, the emails that are going out, the correspondence in general, so that, right, things don't get
Right.
mixed up. And
Exactly.
so that to me is the way that I use it. But what is your recommendation for folks again in terms of understanding these different points, the eclipses, full moons, new moons? And I
Yeah.
know that there are folks who are very into astrology that they practice different rituals, different
Mhm.
cleansing
Mhm.
during those times. And so, how do you tell people to approach,
Yeah.
this kind of depth?
Yeah. Well, I love that you gave the example of like a weather forecast in terms of how you look at your readings, because that's precisely correct. Astrology is not predictive. I promise I don't have a red hand on my door, right? And for anyone who does, that's fine. But that's not what astrology is. The purpose of practicing astrology, getting a reading, is to see what is the forecast over the next week, over the next month, over the next year, so that you can plan accordingly. I always tell folks that when I give readings, my intention is to keep your free will intact so you can have the information and do what you will with it. Obviously, you should use it to your own benefit. And so, coming to your question, what can folks do as we approach new and full moons, as we approach eclipse seasons? I think the first thing to do is to be intentional with what it is you want to do with the information that you have. So, full moons, for examples, represent a period of completion. Things kind of reach a culminating point. And so that's a time when you're kind of releasing something, you're letting go of something, you're surrendering something. Maybe you're wrapping up a project. Maybe you're finally having a difficult conversation. Maybe you're submitting an application for a learning program. But during full moons, that's when you kind of want to bring things to completion
Hmm.
versus a new moon, which is a new start. And so during a new moon, that's a wonderful time to plant a seed, to set an intention and decide, I think this is a direction I want to take. I think this is something that I want to initiate. And of course, you can get into the greater specifics of what you should be focused on based on where this activity is affecting you in your natal chart. And that's why getting a reading, consulting astrologers can be extremely beneficial.
And again, I think that is something that is so important, right? Like we're living in a time of absolute
Yeah,
chaos. A
it's
friend
true.
of mine, I was out to dinner the other day, and he said, "This is the chaos era."
It's
Right?
true. Yeah,
And you have to find ways to make sense, but you also have to um create a sense of nimbleness
right,
inside of yourself, right?
right.
And so when you hear the term chaos era and you are thinking about this moment, what comes up for you?
Yeah. So it's interesting. What comes up to me is what the Greeks referenced as chaos, which is that the nothingness, right? The nothingness that leads to a spark of creation, that leads to a spark of something new. And I say Greeks, I mean ancient Greeks, not current Greeks, right? Um, and so listen, look, Pluto is going to be in the sign of Aquarius for 20 years. Okay. Neptune's going to be where it is now for like the next 15 years. So, where we are, these tensions and chaos that we're experiencing right now, this doesn't end soon. This doesn't end in
Mm,
2026. This doesn't
mhm.
end in 2028. And the first thing I think people really should understand is that part, not from a place of acceptance and just letting it be, but understand there is no going back, right? Like
Mm.
planetary trajections are letting us know that we're in this for the long haul. So that's the first thing, especially when I think of again the practices that we can cling to keep us grounded and anchored in all of this. First part of that is accepting this shit's real. It doesn't end soon. The second thing that comes up for me, especially when I think of these chaotic times that we're living, is understanding there's a bigger story, a bigger developing picture that's happening here. I see this period of time from an astrological lens, of course, as an opportunity to get right the things right that we've been wanting to get right for a while, for a very
Yep,
long time
yep.
already. And if we can allow ourselves to not only dream of what that could be, but then proactively pursue it and put in the action required, we could potentially come out of this much better than we've ever been before. And so, and I mean that as a country, I mean that as a collective, I mean that as a species, right? And so there's a bigger story that's happening here that we also have to be mindful of. This isn't about Donald Trump. Right now, in the here and now, it is. But in the bigger grand scheme of things, it's not. And so the third thing I come to then is, who do we want to be on the other side of this? And what are the changes that we might need to incorporate right now in this very moment in order for us to become who we're meant to be? And
Mhm.
that's the hard part, because I think a lot of people, understandably, are still in denial about where we are right now. A lot of people are still looking to these structures and systems that have been ripping at the seams for a very long time
Yep.
to
Yep.
still come back in and save the day. And that is not the case. We only go forward, we don't go back. So I think the more people can get on board with just the acceptance of where we are right now, clinging to those practices that keep you grounded, and using astrology as a tool, using whatever rituals that support you as a tool, and doing it as if, for lack of a better way of putting it, your life depends on it. Okay. And then also getting clear on what needs to happen next to move us to the other side of this tunnel of transformation, a side that we want to be on, reflecting on that, acting on that. I think those are the main steps, if you will, that come up for me as I think about this time we're living.
You've put it so beautifully, Tracy, so beautifully, because I have said, and I say this on all of my shows, is that I do believe that the moment that we're living in is a great reveal.
Yes.
People are revealing
Yep.
themselves. Systems are revealing
Yep.
themselves in such a way that you can't ignore them,
Right.
in such a way that you can't continue to be what I say is a political ostrich and bury your head in the
Exactly.
sand and pretend these things are not happening. Is that Donald Trump is a manifestation of the ignorance that we have perpetuated over
100%.
the course of decades,
Yeah.
right?
And it also helps to keep in mind what these big planets represent. Pluto is a planet of furrowing beneath the surface to see what's hidden, to bring it to light, to bring it to consciousness. Aquarius is a sign for the people. Aquarius is the visionary of the zodiac. Neptune is a planet that demands we pierce back the veil so that we can see something clearly for what it is, regardless of what we might want it to be. And in the sign of Aries, which is very direct and straightforward and action oriented, you can't unsee what you see. And I think that's a part of why folks are, really kind of in shock and experiencing this level of disillusionment as we're waking up. Aquarius is the awakener, the enlightener of the zodiac. A lot of astrologers believe that we're moving through this age of Aquarius. So there's a rhyme and reason to why all of this is happening. And I love the great reveal. That is precisely correct. That is absolutely correct.
So two more questions for you before we head out. This has been
Hmm.
so illuminating. I love it
Yeah.
so much. So we will have to do it again. But you speak of the age of Aquarius, the age
Mhm.
that we're moving towards, and plenty of people in the chat have asked, what does that mean? What do these ages
Yeah.
signify? So can you unpack that for us?
I think a simple way of answering that question, these ages signify a collective quantum leap into a new era, into a new state of being. What's really interesting to note is this country was born out of the age of enlightenment. A lot of what the founding fathers relied upon or looked to as they were drafting the Constitution and deciding, what this country would be, were these concepts that were born of the age of enlightenment, liberty, egalitarian freedom, right? And so as we move through this current age, we are waking up to what it means to truly be free. We are waking up to the understanding that so much of our regular existence is being restricted and limited through forms of oppression, through forms of denial, through forms of corrupt governance. And we're all becoming hip to this now.
Hmm.
And that's why what we do with the information that we have going forward is going to be what will pull us out of this moment, realizing that it comes back to the people. Like, we are now the wizards, we're the visionaries, we are all the founding fathers at this point, the founding mothers, right? As we give birth to what I've been describing as democracy 2.0, whatever that is. So that's kind of how you can navigate this particular age that we're in right now.
Oh, I love that. I love the idea that we are all the founding people
We're the
right
founding
now,
people. We
right?
are the
Yeah,
founders. Yes. That's
yeah.
that's all of us. That's all
Because
of us.
I say often, Tracy, that, and it's like a quote that I say to myself. It's a mantra I say, that there are opportunities inside of the obstacles that are being presented right now.
Absolutely.
We have known that the systems in this country, whether it's our economic system, our healthcare system, our education system,
Mhm.
are broken. And we've accepted the status quo because the collective, the whole, hadn't been harmed. Only
Right.
certain factions had been harmed, and we were okay with that,
Right.
right? So long as it stayed arm's length away from me. And
Exactly.
so I think that you have to see that in this breaking down,
Mhm.
there is an opportunity to break through to create something else, to
Absolutely.
create something better. But this idea, and I just want to say to folks, who are just joining, this idea of wanting to go back, of wanting to go backwards, is what we need to avail ourselves from. We need to
Yeah.
let go
Yeah.
of this idea that we just want to go back, because backwards, um, for so many of us, has nothing but inequities,
Right.
right?
Right.
It has nothing but inequities and nothing but the celebration of ignorance with regard to those inequities.
Right.
Forward is where we want to be,
That's it.
right?
That's it.
Um, and it's the ability to be able to move through,
Yeah.
right? Not move around or pretend that these things are not happening.
Gotta go directly into the fire, Danielle. That's
That's it.
it.
So that perfect setup for me for my last question for you, Tracy, which is, this show is the fire pit. Like I said at the
Mhm.
top, it's an opportunity and a space for us to gather, to share stories. And it also is an opportunity for us to let go of and throw into the fire things that are no longer serving us. People in different religions, spaces, and places see fire as cleansing, right? As
Yeah.
being able to burn up old ideas. So today I ask you, what are you throwing into the fire pit?
I love the question, and as I think about it, I'm pretty sure that I'm ready to throw all of the remaining fucks I have left into the fire pit. I'm ready. I had a few fucks left, but now
Uh-huh.
I'm ready to get rid of all of them. And the reason why, as I think about the fact that, a convicted felon is president of the United States, it it emboldens me, like, that's the only word I can think of. It emboldens me to dream a little bigger, to cultivate a little more audacity, to kind of take on the kind of confidence that regular white men like Pete Hegseth seem to take on a daily basis. It emboldens me to, uh, be bigger and to really use my voice and my gifts as a vehicle for change, and to do so without apology, to do so without asking for permission. The fact that Donald Trump has been able to do what he's been able to do in such a short amount of time, we can do whatever the fuck we want,
Yep.
especially when it comes to being on the side of what is right and just and humane. And so I feel very emboldened, and I think it's time for me to just throw the rest of my fucks then into the fire pit. Yeah, that's it.
I love that. I love that so, so, so much.
Thank you.
So Tracy, this has been an incredible conversation. Please tell people because so many folks are saying in the chat, I want a reading. I wanna follow Tracy. Tell people how they can follow you, how they can support your work.
Thank you. Well, my name is everything. My website is my name, TraceyLRogers.com. I'm also on Substack. Tracey L. Rogers is the name of my Substack. And you can follow me on Instagram at Trey2U. So pretty straightforward. Thank you again for inviting me. This was great.
Amazing. And I will have you again around the fire pit
Please.
soon. Folks, this has been another episode of The Fire Pit. I have episodes that come out every single week with some of the most brilliant and fascinating people that help us unpack the fuckery of these times. And so please do check them out. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. I never put any of my content behind a paywall, but if you have the ability to become a paid subscriber, please do consider doing so. Tracy, I will be in touch soon.
Great.
Have a
Yay.
fantastic rest of your week.
Thank
And
you.
folks, be well.
Bye. Thanks, Danielle.
Thank you.